homeless girl saved a child in a luxury mall, and the billionaire watching did something unbelievable. In a world where the wealthy and the destitute rarely cross paths, one extraordinary moment of courage shattered all barriers. What happened in those few seconds would have remained hidden from the world, if not for the eyes of one of the richest men in the city. The decision he made next left everyone speechless. Sometimes, true character is revealed in split-second choices when no one thinks you're watching. Maya had mastered the art of invisibility. For 8 months, she'd been living in the shadows of Westfield Grand Mall, washing in bathroom sinks before dawn and sleeping in forgotten maintenance corridors after closing. The irony wasn't lost on her. Surrounded by stores selling $10,000 handbags, while she owned nothing but what fit in her weathered backpack. Security guards had memorized the faces of regular shoppers who spent thousands, but never noticed the girl who spent nothing. "Just keep moving," she whispered to herself, clutching the community college textbook she'd found discarded last week. Before her life collapsed, Maya had been studying engineering with a full scholarship. Now, those dreams felt like someone else's memories. What security didn't know was that Maya had once been invited to a national science competition, or that she could solve complex equations faster than most college professors. They saw only what they expected to see. Nothing. But Maya wasn't the only one hiding their true self behind these marble walls. Harrison Reed strode through the mall's VIP entrance, his Italian leather shoes barely making a sound on the polished floor. At 38, he had amassed a fortune that put him on every 40 under 40 list worth mentioning. His tech company had revolutionized medical diagnostics, saving countless lives, and making him billions in the process. "Mr. Reed, your usual private shopping suite is ready," the mall director said, practically bowing as Harrison passed. He nodded politely, though his mind was elsewhere. These shopping trips had become a ritual, not out of desire, but desperate distraction. Behind the confident smile and perfectly tailored suit was a man increasingly hollow. His penthouse overlooking the city was filled with everything money could buy and nothing that brought him joy. 3 divorces had left him cynical about relationships, and his board of directors treated him like a money-making machine rather than a person. "Will you be requiring anything special today, sir?" asked the attendant. "Just some peace," Harrison replied, dismissing his entourage with a subtle gesture. He wanted to walk the mall alone today, something his security team hated. But even surrounded by thousands of shoppers, Harrison felt a familiar isolation, the same crushing loneliness that had become his constant companion. Neither of them could have predicted how their worlds would collide in the next, heart-stopping moments. The food court buzzed with the usual lunchtime chaos. Business people typing furiously on laptops, teenagers clustered around tables, and harried parents trying to manage excited children. The air was thick with the mingled aromas of a dozen different cuisines, from spicy Chinese to Italian pasta, creating that distinctive food court perfume that was somehow both appetizing and overwhelming. Maya sat in her usual corner spot, nursing a cup of water while pretending to read. She'd learned that people rarely questioned someone who appeared absorbed in a book. Her stomach growled painfully, but she ignored it with practiced discipline. 3 more hours until the bakery discarded their day-old pastries in the back dumpster. She had timed it perfectly. 7:45 p.m., just after the evening supervisor left and before the night cleaning crew arrived. It was a small window of opportunity, but it had kept her fed for months. The pages of her salvaged textbook were dog-eared and water-stained, but the complex equations still brought her a strange comfort. They were logical, predictable, unlike her life. which had unraveled with breathtaking speed after her mother's illness, drained their modest savings, and eventually took her only family. The scholarship committee had been sympathetic but firm. No permanent address, no continued enrollment. Just like that, her future had evaporated. Across the atrium, Harrison wandered aimlessly, his security detail hanging back at his insistence. The weight of his custom-made watch, a $300,000 anniversary gift to himself, felt unusually heavy today. He found himself observing ordinary people. Families laughing, couples holding hands, a grandmother teaching her grandchild how to fold a napkin. Experiences that felt increasingly foreign to him. When was the last time he'd shared a meal that wasn't about business? He couldn't remember. His phone vibrated for the 12th time that hour. Another crisis at the office, no doubt. Another decision only he could make. Another reason people wanted a piece of him rather than time with him. Harrison ignored it, feeling a small thrill of rebellion in this tiny act of defiance. The mall's carefully controlled environment, the perfect temperature, the subtle music designed to encourage shopping, the strategic placement of luxury stores, usually provided him a strange comfort. Today, it felt suffocating. His therapist would call this existential ennui, a fancy term for the emptiness that came with having everything and valuing nothing. Then it happened. A small boy, perhaps 4 years old, with curly hair and light-up sneakers, broke away from his distracted mother at the gelato counter. She was juggling her purse, phone, and wallet while trying to decide between pistachio and stracciatella. With the fearless determination unique to toddlers, the boy darted toward the decorative fountain that dominated the center of the food court, captivated by the glittering coins beneath the water. His little face was alight with wonder, oblivious to the danger ahead. Maya saw it first. The child's trajectory, the wet marble edge, the dangerous depth of the central pool where the water reached nearly 3 feet. Without hesitation, she dropped her book and lunged forward, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. In that split second, there was no calculation, no thought for herself or her precarious position in this place where she wasn't supposed to be. Harrison noticed the girl's sudden movement before he saw the danger. Something about her urgency cut through his malaise. His eyes followed her path just as the boy's foot slipped on the fountain's edge, leaving a tiny wet footprint on the polished marble. Time seemed to slow as the child tipped backward toward the water, arms windmilling in that helpless way of someone who knows they're falling but can't stop it. Maya launched herself across the polished floor, sliding the last few feet on her knees. Her arms wrapped around the boy just as his head was about to hit the marble corner, pulling him safely against her chest as her own momentum sent them both tumbling onto the floor. The impact knocked the wind from her lungs, and she felt the sting as her elbow connected with the hard floor. The boy was surprisingly heavy against her chest, his little heart racing wildly against hers. For a moment, they stayed frozen like that. The homeless girl and the child who had no idea how close he'd come to disaster. For a split second, the food court fell silent, as if the entire world had paused to witness what had almost happened and what had been prevented. Then chaos erupted. The mother's scream of realization cutting through the stillness, people rushing forward with phones already recording, security guards appearing from seemingly nowhere, their walkie-talkies crackling with urgent voices. "Tommy!" the mother cried, dropping her gelato and rushing forward, mascara already streaming down her face. "Oh my God, Tommy!" The boy, more startled than hurt, began to cry. Not from pain, but from the sudden commotion and his mother's obvious distress. Maya gently disentangled herself from the child, wincing as she noticed the fresh tear in her only pair of jeans and the angry red scrape blooming on her arm. "He's okay," she said quietly to the mother, who was now clutching her son and alternating between scolding him for running off and covering his face with grateful kisses. "He just slipped. Kids are quick." The mother looked up at Maya, really seeing her for the first time. "You saved him. You saved my baby," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "How can I ever thank you?" Maya shook her head, already backing away. Attention was the last thing she needed, especially from security, who were now scanning the crowd with renewed interest. "Anyone would have done the same," she mumbled, pulling her threadbare hoodie tighter around herself. In the commotion, no one noticed Maya quietly trying to slip away, leaving even her precious textbook behind in her haste to disappear. No one except Harrison Reed, whose eyes hadn't left her for a second. He saw what others missed. The careful way she avoided the security cameras, the slight limp from her impact with the floor, the fear in her eyes that had nothing to do with the accident and everything to do with being noticed. What he'd just witnessed wasn't just a rescue. It was pure instinct, the kind of selfless reaction that couldn't be faked or calculated. In his world of corporate sharks and social climbers, where every action was measured for its potential return, what he'd just seen was increasingly rare. Someone who acted without any expectation of reward or recognition. In fact, she seemed desperate to avoid both. In that moment, with absolutely nothing to gain and no audience to impress, he'd seen something increasingly rare in his world. Genuine character. As security helped the still trembling mother and her son, and onlookers returned to their meals with fresh gossip to share, Harrison made a decision. He reached down and picked up the abandoned textbook, running his fingers over the advanced engineering problems inside. Then he began to follow the girl who had disappeared into the crowd, signaling to his security team to hang back. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Harrison Reed felt something stirring inside him that he had almost forgotten existed. Curiosity about someone else's story, and a strange, urgent need to understand. The night of the girl who would risk everything for a stranger, but nothing for herself. Harrison weaved through the crowded mall, clutching Maya's textbook in his hand. The weight of it surprised him. Not just physically, but what it represented. Someone's abandoned dreams. Pages dog-eared with determination. His security detail followed at a distance, exchanging concerned glances as their employer pursued a disheveled young woman with unusual determination. Trent, his head of personal security for 8 years, touched his earpiece nervously. This deviation from routine made his team uneasy. "Sir, should we intercept?" came the discreet voice through Harrison's own earpiece. "Stand down," Harrison murmured, barely moving his lips. "Maintain distance." He kept Maya in sight, the frayed hoodie and hurried gait, making her surprisingly easy to track, despite her evident practice at remaining invisible. She moved with the efficiency of someone who knew exactly how to navigate this space without drawing attention. Harrison noticed how she avoided the main thoroughfares, keeping to the edges of the walkways, never making eye contact with store employees or security cameras. It was a carefully choreographed dance of invisibility that spoke volumes about her recent existence. Maya moved with purpose, occasionally glancing over her shoulder. The food court incident had drawn too much attention. Attention she couldn't afford. She'd noticed the well-dressed man following her, and felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. The expensive suit, the security detail trying to be inconspicuous. He wasn't mall security. Worse, he might be someone with actual influence. Had someone recognized her from the security bulletins? Was he connected to the mall ownership? She quickened her pace, ducking into the service corridor behind the luxury watch boutique. A passage she'd discovered months ago that led to a seldom-used stairwell. The service corridor was a stark contrast to the polished opulence of the mall proper. Here, the concrete floors were bare, the walls utilitarian, and marked with scuff marks from countless deliveries. The fluorescent lighting buzzed overhead, one bulb flickering erratically. Maya felt safer here. This was her world now, not the gleaming facades where people like him belonged. "Wait!" Harrison called out, accelerating to catch up. His voice echoed in the narrow corridor, bouncing off the bare walls with unexpected volume. Maya froze. Running would only confirm her guilt, whatever it might be. She'd learned that lesson the hard way 3 months ago, when a security guard had spotted her using the family restroom to wash her hair. The chase had nearly gotten her caught, and she'd lost her backpack with her remaining clean clothes in the process. She turned slowly, keeping her back to the wall, eyes searching for escape routes. The service elevator to her left, the push-bar emergency exit 20 feet to her right. Her muscles tensed, ready to bolt at the first sign of threat. "You forgot this," Harrison said, slightly breathless as he held out her textbook. The leather soles of his handmade shoes were not designed for chasing people through service corridors. Advanced Engineering Mathematics. Impressive reading. Maya's eyes widened at the sight of the book. That textbook had cost her $178.50 new, a fortune she'd scraped together from her campus job before everything fell apart. It was one of the few possessions she hadn't been forced to sell or abandon. She hesitated, then reached for it cautiously, her fingers brushing against his manicured hand. "Thanks," she murmured, not meeting his gaze, already calculating whether she could still make it to the emergency exit before he could react. "That was remarkable what you did back there," Harrison continued, making no move to come closer, sensing her wariness like one might approach a stray cat. Most people would have just watched or pulled out their phones to record it. But you didn't even think, you just acted. She shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention, her shoulders hunching slightly as if to make herself smaller. "Anyone would have done it." "No," Harrison said with certainty born from years of observing human nature at its worst. In boardrooms, at charity galas where donations were calculated for tax benefits, in divorce proceedings where love had curdled into asset division. They wouldn't have. Trust me. An awkward silence fell between them, the billionaire and the homeless girl, standing in a service corridor surrounded by the hum of industrial air conditioning and the distant sounds of commerce. The disparity between them couldn't have been more stark. His bespoke suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary, her layered clothes worn thin at the elbows and knees. His carefully styled hair, her unwashed locks pulled back in a practical ponytail. His well-fed frame, her too thin wrists poking out from frayed sleeves. "I'm Harrison Reed," he said finally, extending his hand, the gesture oddly formal in the industrial backdrop. Maya stared at the outstretched hand, then at the man's face, searching for ulterior motives. Years of caution warred with basic social conditioning. "Maya," she replied, reluctantly shaking his hand but offering no surname. His grip was firm but not overpowering, his palm smooth against her calloused one. "You understand the material in that book?" Harrison asked, nodding toward the textbook she now clutched protectively against her chest. He'd noticed the complex differential equations, the margin notes in a neat, precise handwriting. A flash of pride briefly overcame her caution, straightening her posture momentarily. "Every page. I was studying engineering before." She trailed off, regretting the admission immediately. The less people knew about her, the safer she was. Her eyes darted away, focusing on a dent in the wall behind him. Harrison nodded, not pressing for details. He recognized the protective shell of someone who had been hurt by circumstances beyond their control. He'd seen it often enough in the mirror. "I have a proposition for you, Maya. No strings attached." He reached into his jacket and produced a business card. Simple white cardstock with just his name and a phone number embossed in silver. No company name, no title. "I run a technology company that develops medical diagnostic equipment. We have a scholarship program for promising engineers." Maya's expression hardened with suspicion, her jaw tightening visibly. "What do you want from me?" Her voice took on an edge that suggested she'd heard propositions before and knew they always came with hidden costs. The directness of her question caught Harrison off guard. In his world, people danced around their intentions, burying them beneath layers of pleasantries and false modesty. Agendas were concealed behind smiles and compliments. Her bluntness was refreshing, almost startling in its clarity. "An opportunity to help someone who deserves it," he answered honestly, surprising himself with his own transparency. "And maybe to do something that matters for once." The words felt strange in his mouth, unpolished, unrehearsed. When was the last time he'd spoken without calculating the impact of each syllable? "I don't need charity," Maya said, but her fingers tightened around the business card, the embossed lettering leaving faint impressions on her skin. Her eyes betrayed the war between pride and pragmatism raging within her. Harrison smiled slightly, recognizing the struggle. "It's not charity, it's investment. The world needs more people who don't hesitate to do the right thing, even when no one's watching." He glanced at his watch, a timepiece worth more than most cars. "I have a meeting I can't miss. The number on that card is my private line. Use it or don't, your choice." Before Maya could respond, Harrison turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the corridor, her mind racing with possibilities and doubts in equal measure. His footsteps echoed against the concrete floor, gradually fading as he returned to the world of light and luxury. Maya stood frozen, the business card in one hand, textbook in the other, as if weighing them against each other. The card seemed to burn in her palm, a potential lifeline, or perhaps just another disappointment waiting to happen. She'd had enough of those to last a lifetime. Back in the main concourse, Harrison's head of security, James, approached with a concerned expression. At 52, the former military intelligence officer had seen enough to develop an almost supernatural sense for trouble. "Sir, we ran a preliminary check based on the description while you were talking to her. The girl's been living in the mall for months. Security has footage but never managed to catch her." Harrison raised an eyebrow, impressed despite himself. "Living here? How is that possible?" He looked around at the crowded mall with new eyes, suddenly seeing the hidden infrastructure that might make such a life possible. Service corridors, storage rooms, emergency stairwells. "Very carefully, apparently," James replied, his tone professional but with a hint of reluctant admiration. "Mall this size has plenty of blind spots if you know where to look. She uses the family restrooms before opening hours, stores her belongings in an abandoned storage space near the east loading dock, and sleeps in the unfinished retail space on the 3rd floor, the one that's been tied up in that leasing dispute. Security does sweeps, but she's learned their patterns. What do you want us to do about her?" Harrison considered the question, remembering the intelligence in Maya's eyes and the way she'd risked her precarious situation to save a child without hesitation. She was surviving on nothing but her wits in a world designed to exclude people like her. There was something remarkable in that, something worth preserving. Nothing, he decided. For now, we wait. James nodded, knowing better than to question his employer's decisions, even the unusual ones. The board meeting starts in 20 minutes, sir. Your presentation materials have been uploaded to the server. Harrison nodded, already mentally shifting gears, compartmentalizing the encounter as he prepared to face the quarterly inquisition from his board of directors. Yet, as he straightened his tie and stepped into the waiting car, the image of Maya's defiant eyes stayed with him. A stark contrast to the sea of sycophantic faces he was about to confront. Later that evening, as Maya huddled in her hidden corner of the mall's forgotten storage room, she stared at Harrison's business card under the dim light of her salvaged reading lamp. The small space was meticulously organized, a testament to her determination to maintain dignity amid desperate circumstances. A makeshift bed of flattened cardboard boxes covered with a clean blanket stolen from a department store display. A plastic crate containing her few remaining possessions, 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush and travel-sized toothpaste, a half-empty bottle of shampoo, a dog-eared copy of the Feynman Lectures on Physics she'd refused to sell even when hunger gnawed at her insides. The storage room had once housed holiday decorations, now long since relocated to a more accessible location. It had taken Maya weeks to find this perfect spot. Overlooked in the mall's sprawling blueprint, positioned between a service corridor and the back of a greeting card store, with a ventilation duct that kept the air circulating and muffled the sounds of her occasional coughing fits. Her fingers traced the embossed lettering on Harrison's card as she weighed her limited options against this unexpected lifeline. The scholarship he mentioned, could it be real? In her experience, when things seemed too good to be true, they invariably were. Yet there had been something in his eyes, not pity, which she couldn't have stomached, but recognition. As if he'd seen something in her that she herself had forgotten existed. Trust had become a luxury she could no longer afford. The past year had taught her harsh lessons about the fragility of security and the conditional nature of most human connections. When her mother's cancer had drained their meager savings and then taken her life, Maya had discovered how quickly support systems could evaporate. The distant relatives who couldn't take her in, the financial aid office that couldn't make exceptions, the landlord who couldn't extend credit, all with perfectly reasonable explanations for why they couldn't help. Yet something about the man's eyes, tired but honest, made her wonder if perhaps this time the risk might be worth taking. What did she have to lose that hadn't already been taken from her? With trembling hands, she reached for the prepaid phone she'd managed to keep charged through careful use of public outlets. It had 11 minutes of talk time remaining, carefully rationed for emergencies. Was this an emergency or an opportunity? The distinction had blurred months ago. One call could change everything. But was she ready for everything to change? Maya's finger hovered over the keypad, the first digit of Harrison's number half-pressed. Outside her hidden sanctuary, the mall had fallen silent, the cleaning crews making their final rounds before the building was locked down for the night. Soon the motion sensors would be activated, limiting her movement until morning. It was now or never. She took a deep breath and began to dial, each number bringing her closer to a decision that felt monumental in its implications. As the phone began to ring, Maya closed her eyes, unsure whether she was making the biggest mistake of her life or finally finding her way back to the future she'd been forced to abandon. On the other side of the city, in his penthouse overlooking the glittering skyline, Harrison's private phone vibrated against the marble countertop. He glanced at the unknown number, a small smile forming on his lips as he reached to answer. Some connections, once made, alter the trajectory of lives forever. Neither of them could have predicted how profoundly their paths would intertwine from this moment forward. Reed Biotech, Mr. Reed's office. The crisp, professional voice that answered wasn't what Maya had expected. She had imagined Harrison himself would answer his private line, not this efficient-sounding gatekeeper with perfect diction and subtle authority. She hesitated, nearly ending the call. Her thumb hovered over the red button, a familiar panic rising in her chest. This was a mistake. People like her didn't get second chances. I'm calling for Harrison Reed. He gave me this number today. The words tumbled out before she could reconsider. A pause. May I ask who's calling? The voice remained neutral, neither encouraging nor dismissive. Maya. Just Maya. She pressed her back against the cool concrete wall, heart hammering against her ribs. In the dim light of her hideaway, she felt exposed despite being completely alone. The simple act of reaching out, of making herself known, went against every survival instinct she'd honed over the past months. Another pause, longer this time. Maya could hear the faint clicking of computer keys in the background. Was this woman looking her up? Checking some list? What would she find? One moment, please. The line filled with soft classical music. Bach, she thought, though she couldn't place the specific piece. A cello suite, perhaps. Her mother would have known immediately. Elaine Patel had played violin in community orchestras her entire adult life, filling their small apartment with music even during the worst days of her illness. The incongruity of listening to Bach while sitting on a makeshift bed in an abandoned storage room nearly made her laugh. How had her life become this strange contradiction? Maya. Harrison's voice replaced the music, warm and surprisingly energetic for the late hour. No hint of sleep or irritation at being disturbed. I'm glad you called. I haven't decided anything, she said quickly, needing to establish boundaries before this conversation went too far. I just wanted more information. She picked at a loose thread on her jeans, a nervous habit from childhood that had resurfaced in recent months. Of course. No pressure, no sales pitch, just patience. The response surprised her. Most people would have launched into persuasion mode immediately. What would you like to know? Maya had prepared a mental list of questions. Practical, skeptical inquiries designed to expose whatever angle he was working. She'd rehearsed them while pacing her small hideaway, determined to maintain control of the conversation. Instead, she found herself asking, "Why me? You don't know anything about me." I know you understand advanced engineering concepts, Harrison replied without hesitation. I know you have extraordinary instincts and courage. And I know you're surviving in circumstances that would break most people. A brief pause. Sometimes you see more of a person's character in 5 minutes of crisis than in 5 years of conversation. Maya swallowed hard, unprepared for the simple directness of his answer. She'd expected platitudes, not this uncomfortable perception. What exactly are you offering? She asked, steering back to practical ground. A legitimate opportunity. The scholarship includes full tuition at Westridge Polytechnic, housing in the student apartments on Maple Street, a monthly stipend for living expenses, and a guaranteed internship at Reed Biotech during breaks and summers. His tone remained matter-of-fact, not philanthropic. In return, you bring your mind and your perspective to problems worth solving. No strings, no hidden obligations. There has to be a catch, Maya insisted, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Nobody gave away opportunities worth hundreds of thousands of dollars without expecting something significant in return. Her experience with the financial aid office at her previous university had taught her that even free money came with complex conditions and expectations. The only catch is that you'll have to work harder than you've ever worked before. Our medical devices save lives, but the engineering challenges are complex. We need innovative thinkers who see solutions others miss. Harrison paused. That's it. No indentured servitude, no mandatory employment after graduation. If you decide to work elsewhere after completing your degree, that's your choice. Maya closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment to imagine it. A real bed, regular meals, the chance to finish her education, hot showers whenever she wanted, not having to calculate each day's movements around security patrols. It seemed impossible, like a fever dream born of hunger and exhaustion. The kind of opportunity that happened to other people, not to girls who slept in abandoned storage rooms. "I need time to think," she finally said, unwilling to commit while her emotions were so raw. Hope was a dangerous thing when you'd learn to live without it. Take all the time you need. The opportunity remains open. Harrison paused, his next words careful but deliberate. "But Maya, you don't have to keep living in the mall. I can arrange temporary accommodations while you decide. No obligations attached to that either." Maya froze, her blood running cold. "How did you—" "I have resources," he said simply. It wasn't difficult to figure out. Anger flared, hot and defensive. "So, you had me investigated, spied on?" The violation felt personal, as if he'd walked into her hideaway uninvited. Her voice rose despite her efforts to control it. "Basic due diligence," Harrison countered calmly. "In your position, wouldn't you want to know who you're dealing with? Look me up. Research Reed Biotech. Verify everything I've told you. I expect nothing less." The logic was irritatingly sound. Maya exhaled slowly, forcing her defensiveness back down. "I'll think about it," she conceded, hating how vulnerable the words made her feel. "That's all I ask. My assistant Eliza will expect your call. She can arrange everything without my involvement if that makes you more comfortable." He recited another phone number, which Maya quickly memorized. "Eliza has been with me for 20 years. She's discreet and trustworthy." After the call ended, Maya sat motionless, the phone still clutched in her hand. For the first time in months, possibility stretched before her, terrifying in its unfamiliarity. She had become so accustomed to the narrow parameters of survival that the sudden expansion of options felt disorienting, like stepping from a dark room into blinding sunlight. She reached for her textbook, running her fingers over the worn cover. Inside the front page, her mother's handwriting remained. "To my brilliant Maya, the future belongs to those who build it. Love always, Mom." The inscription, written when her mother had still believed in futures and possibilities, now seemed like a message from another lifetime. Could she dare to believe again? Or was this just another path to disappointment? Across town, Harrison set down his phone and turned to the window. The city sprawled below his penthouse, a constellation of lights against the darkness. Somewhere in that urban galaxy, a brilliant young woman was weighing his offer against the weight of her well-earned suspicion. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass, suddenly exhausted. The board meeting earlier that day had been particularly contentious. The shareholders were pushing for cost reductions in research and development, the very heart of what made Reed Biotech innovative. Market realities, they called it, as if life-saving technology should be subject to the same profit margins as luxury handbags. She called? Eliza asked from the doorway of his home office. At 62, she'd been with him since he'd founded the company in a garage 20 years ago. She still dressed with the same practical elegance she'd always maintained. A charcoal pencil skirt, cream blouse, and the jade pendant her late husband had given her on their 10th anniversary. She'd seen his triumphs and failures, his marriage and divorce, his transformation from idealistic inventor to hardened CEO. She did. Harrison didn't turn from the window. And Eliza stepped into the room, setting a cup of tea on his desk, chamomile with honey, his nightly ritual since doctors had warned him about his blood pressure last year. She's cautious, smart. He smiled faintly at his reflection in the glass. She's exactly what the program needs. Eliza studied her employer with knowing eyes, taking in the slight slump of his shoulders, the way his hand unconsciously touched the spot where his wedding ring had once been. The program? Or you? Harrison finally turned, his expression guarded. What's that supposed to mean? It means you've interviewed 32 candidates for the scholarship program in the past year and rejected everyone. Yet, you're offering a position to a homeless girl you met today. Eliza's tone held no judgment, only observation. The privilege of 2 decades of loyalty. This feels different. She's different, Harrison insisted, moving to his desk and picking up the tea. You didn't see her today. No hesitation, no calculation, just pure instinct to help someone else, even at her own expense. He ran a hand through his hair, still thick but increasingly streaked with silver at 45. When was the last time you saw that kind of genuine character? Not since you, before the company went public, Eliza replied softly. The words hung between them, uncomfortable in their accuracy. Harrison turned back to the window, unable to dispute the implied criticism. The IPO 7 years ago had changed everything, bringing wealth beyond imagination, but also shareholders, board members, quarterly projections, and endless compromises. The young man who had wanted to revolutionize medical technology now spent more time in boardrooms than laboratories. Just be careful, Harrison, Eliza added. Good intentions don't always lead to good outcomes. For either of you. What are you worried about exactly? Harrison asked, though he suspected he already knew. Eliza sighed, choosing her words carefully. I'm worried you're looking for redemption in this girl's potential, and I'm worried she'll feel obligated to provide it. After she left, Harrison remained at the window, sipping tea that had grown lukewarm. Was Eliza right? Was he merely using Maya as some kind of proxy for his own lost idealism? He thought of her eyes, wary but still alight with intelligence, despite everything she'd endured. No, this wasn't about him. This was about potential that deserved a chance. Still, he wondered if he was offering Maya salvation or merely dragging her into his complicated world. And which of them, ultimately, needed saving more. Morning light filtered through the small ventilation grate in Maya's hideaway, casting geometric patterns on the concrete floor. She'd barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities and doubts. The business card lay beside her, now creased from being handled throughout the night. Today would be different. Today, she would make a decision. She carefully folded her blanket and packed her few possessions into her backpack. A ritual she performed each morning, leaving no trace of her presence in case her sanctuary was discovered. But today, the familiar actions felt weighted with significance, as if she were packing to leave not just this room, but an entire chapter of her life. Maya paused at her small collection of toiletries, neatly arranged on a plastic shelf she'd salvaged from a dumpster. The travel-size shampoo bottle was nearly empty. The toothpaste tube had been rolled up meticulously to extract every last bit. The disposable razor had long since dulled. Small, everyday objects that had become precious in their scarcity. The mall would be opening soon. Maya slipped into the service corridor, navigating the back passages with practiced ease. She emerged near the public restrooms, timing her exit to coincide with the arrival of the first maintenance staff. Hector, who cleaned the East Wing restrooms and always wore headphones, never noticing her quick entrance and exit. Another day of invisibility was beginning. Except today, she didn't want to be invisible anymore. Maya found a quiet corner of the food court, not yet open, but accessible. The morning cleaning crew was finishing up, the smell of industrial disinfectant still hanging in the air. A barista was preparing the coffee kiosk for opening, the rich aroma of brewing coffee providing a pleasant counterpoint to the chemical scents. She pulled out her phone and checked the battery. 28%, enough for what she needed to do. Maya dialed the number again, her decision crystallizing with each ring. Whatever happened next, she couldn't continue as she had been. The incident with the child yesterday had reminded her that she was still capable of making a difference, of being more than just a shadow surviving on the margins. Reed Biotech, Mr. Reed's office. The same professional voice answered. "This is Maya," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "I'd like to speak with Eliza about the scholarship program." "Of course, Maya. This is Eliza speaking." The voice softened slightly. "I've been expecting your call." "I want to accept the offer," Maya said before she could second-guess herself. "But I have conditions." There was a brief pause, then what sounded almost like a chuckle. "I would be disappointed if you didn't. Go ahead." Maya took a deep breath. "First, I want everything in writing. The scholarship terms, expectations, obligations. Second, I want to start classes next semester, not wait for fall. Third, I want to work while I study, not just the internship, but actual paid work. I don't want charity." "All reasonable requests," Eliza replied without hesitation. "Anything else?" Maya hesitated, then added the request that mattered most. "I want to develop medical devices for people who can't afford them, not just for those who can pay premium prices." A longer pause this time. "That's not typically something we include in scholarship agreements." "It's non-negotiable for me," Maya insisted, surprised by her own boldness. "I need to know my work will help people like my mother, who died because she couldn't afford the right diagnostic equipment early enough." The words spilled out before she could stop them. The truth she rarely voiced aloud. "I understand," Eliza said softly. "I'll discuss this with Harrison. In the meantime, shall we arrange temporary housing for you today?" Maya looked around the food court, at the place that had been both prison and sanctuary for months. "Yes," she said finally. "I'm ready to leave." As she ended the call, Maya felt a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration. She had just committed to stepping back into the world, a world that had once rejected her, but might now offer a second chance. She thought of her mother, who had always believed in possibilities even when reality suggested otherwise. Sometimes the bravest decision is simply to allow yourself to be seen, to step out of the shadows and risk the light, whatever it might reveal. Maya stood, shouldering her backpack that contained everything she owned in the world. It was pitifully light, a physical manifestation of how little she had left. But as she walked toward the mall entrance to meet the car Eliza was sending, Maya realized that starting with almost nothing meant she could build exactly the life she wanted, piece by piece. The automatic doors slid open, and Maya stepped outside into the morning sunlight. For the first time in months, she didn't hunch her shoulders or lower her gaze. Instead, she lifted her face to the warmth, allowing herself to be visible, present, alive. Behind her, the mall continued its daily rhythm, already forgetting the girl who had haunted its shadows. Ahead of her stretched a future suddenly, improbably full of possibility. Maya took a deep breath and began to walk forward. In his office across town, Harrison Reed received a text message from Eliza. "She's accepted, with conditions." He smiled, setting down the quarterly report he'd been reviewing. "Of course she has," he murmured to himself. Perhaps they would save each other after all. The Reed Biotech corporate headquarters stood like a gleaming monolith against the city skyline. 42 stories of glass and steel reflecting the morning sunlight. Maya stared up at it from the sidewalk, her stomach knotting with anxiety. 2 weeks had passed since her life had changed course. And still, moments like this made her feel like an imposter about to be exposed. She adjusted the strap of her new messenger bag, a practical purchase from the stipend Eliza had arranged, and smoothed down her button-up shirt. The clothes felt foreign against her skin after months of wearing the same few items. Clean, pressed fabric. No frayed edges or worn patches. Another layer of her disguise as a person who belonged in this world. The small apartment Eliza had arranged for her still felt unreal. A studio near campus with actual furniture, a refrigerator stocked with food, hot water that never ran out. Maya had spent the first night simply sitting on the edge of the bed, afraid to fully relax into the mattress, as if comfort itself might be a trap. She'd slept on the floor instead, her body too accustomed to hardness to accept softness without suspicion. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, a mantra repeated too many times to count over the past 14 days. Taking a deep breath, she pushed through the revolving doors into the soaring atrium. The space opened up dramatically, a cathedral to innovation, with suspended walkways crisscrossing overhead and a massive sculpture of intertwining DNA strands rising from a reflection pool. Natural light poured in through the glass ceiling, illuminating the Reed Biotech logo emblazoned on the far wall. A stylized double helix transforming into a human form. Employees moved purposefully across the polished marble floor, each person seemingly confident in their place within this ecosystem of progress and possibility. The security desk loomed ahead, staffed by 2 uniformed guards who watched the flow of employees with practiced vigilance. Maya approached, fighting the instinct to turn and flee. Old habits from her mall days whispered that she should avoid security personnel at all costs, find a service entrance, blend with a group, become invisible. "I'm Maya Patel," she said instead, the surname still feeling strange on her tongue after months of being just Maya. She'd reclaimed her full name when filling out the scholarship paperwork, a small but significant step toward reclaiming her identity. "I have an appointment with Eliza Kwan." The guard checked his screen, then nodded. 15th floor. Ms. Kwan is expecting you." He handed her a visitor badge with her name already printed on it. "This will activate the elevators and secure doors. Please keep it visible at all times." Maya clipped the badge to her shirt pocket, the weight of it oddly reassuring. Tangible proof that she was expected, authorized, legitimate. She joined the stream of people heading toward the bank of elevators, trying to mirror their confident postures and purposeful strides. A group entered the elevator with her, engaged in technical conversation about protein synthesis algorithms. Maya listened, understanding more than she expected, her mind automatically cataloging terms to research later. The elevator ascended smoothly, each floor bringing Maya closer to whatever this new chapter held. When the doors opened on 15, Eliza was waiting, elegant in a charcoal pantsuit, her silver hair swept into a practical bun. Despite her age, she stood with the straight-backed posture of someone half her years, radiating quiet authority. "Right on time," she said with approval, extending her hand. "Welcome to Reed A. Biotech." Maya shook it, noting the firm grip and direct eye contact. "Thank you for arranging everything so quickly." "Efficiency is underrated," Eliza replied with a small smile. "How are you settling into the apartment?" "It's perfect," Maya said automatically, the expected response. She didn't mention the first few nights on the floor, or how she still kept her backpack packed with essentials, ready to flee at the first sign that this miracle might dissolve. "Good. You'll let me know if you need anything." It wasn't a question. Eliza gestured down the corridor. "Come, Harrison is waiting." They walked through an open office space where employees glanced up curiously as they passed. Maya felt their eyes, wondering what story they were constructing about her presence. The scholarship student? The charity case? The latest of Harrison Reed's projects? She resisted the urge to hunch her shoulders or lower her gaze, behaviors that had become second nature during her months of trying to remain unnoticed. Everyone here is evaluated on their contributions, not their backgrounds, Eliza said quietly, as if reading Maya's thoughts. Prove your worth through your work, and nothing else will matter. They passed a series of laboratories with glass walls, offering glimpses of researchers bent over advanced equipment or gathered around holographic displays. One lab appeared to focus on prosthetics. A technician was calibrating what looked like a neural interface for an artificial limb. Another seemed dedicated to diagnostic imaging, with screens displaying cross-sections of human organs rendered in extraordinary detail. Eliza led her to a glass-walled conference room where Harrison stood examining a holographic display of what appeared to be a medical device. He looked different in this environment. More commanding, his casual confidence replaced by focused intensity. His suit was impeccably tailored, his posture alert as he manipulated the hologram with practiced gestures. "Maya," he said, looking up with a smile that transformed his features. "Welcome." "Mr. Reed," she replied formally, unsure of the protocol in this professional setting. "Harrison, please." He gestured to the display. "What do you see?" Maya approached cautiously, studying the rotating hologram. It showed a handheld device with a needle component and digital interface. She analyzed the design, her engineering instincts engaging despite her nervousness. "It's a blood analysis system," she said after a moment, "for point-of-care diagnostics. But there's a flaw in the capillary action mechanism. The sample would coagulate before reaching the sensor array." Harrison's eyebrows rose. Most engineering graduates wouldn't catch that. He glanced at Eliza, who responded with a subtle nod that Maya couldn't quite interpret. "You're right. That's precisely the problem we're trying to solve." "I could try to help," Maya offered hesitantly. "I did a research project on microfluidics before." She trailed off, unwilling to complete the sentence. "Before my mother died. Before I lost everything. Before I ended up living in a mall. Before life intervened," Harrison finished for her, his tone neutral but understanding. "That's exactly why you're here." He waved a hand, and the hologram disappeared. "But today isn't about work. Today is orientation. Your classes at Westridge start Monday, and you'll work here 15 hours a week as we agreed." "About that," Maya began, the question that had been bothering her finally surfacing. "Why are you doing this? Really?" The words came out more bluntly than she'd intended, but she couldn't retract them. The directness of her question seemed to catch Harrison off guard. He exchanged a glance with Eliza, who excused herself with practiced discretion, closing the glass door behind her. Once they were alone, Harrison sat at the conference table, gesturing for Maya to join him. She did, perching on the edge of the chair as if prepared to bolt at any moment. 15 years ago, Harrison began, his voice taking on a different quality, less polished, more authentic. I developed a portable dialysis device that could have been manufactured for under $200. It would have helped thousands of people in underserved communities, particularly in rural areas where regular dialysis centers are inaccessible. His expression darkened. But the board decided the profit margins weren't attractive enough. We shelved it to focus on premium products with better returns for shareholders. That's horrible, Maya said before she could stop herself. That's business, Harrison replied, though his tone suggested agreement. When you take a company public, you gain capital but lose certain freedoms. I've made compromises I'm not proud of. But this scholarship program is mine alone, funded from my personal accounts, not corporate money. The board can't touch it. So I'm your redemption project? Maya asked, the possibility both unsettling and strangely comforting. At least it was a motive she could understand. Self-interest wrapped in altruism was more believable than pure generosity. Harrison smiled ruefully. Perhaps we're each other's. He leaned forward, his expression more open than she'd seen before. I believe in second chances, Maya. Not just for you, but for what Reed Biotech was meant to be. Sometimes you need fresh eyes to see old problems differently. And my condition. About developing affordable technology? Maya pressed, unwilling to be distracted by sentiment. Was that just humored on paper? The agreement is legally binding, Harrison said, his tone shifting back to something more professional. But, more importantly, it aligns with a vision I've never fully abandoned. He stood, signaling the end of this unexpected moment of candor. Eliza will show you around. Introduce you to the team you'll be working with. Any questions before we proceed? Maya had dozens, but one pressed forward. The condition I added to the agreement about developing affordable medical technology. Was that just humored on paper, or will I actually get to work on it? That, Harrison said with unexpected intensity, is entirely up to you. Prove yourself here, and doors will open, including ones that have been closed for too long. He paused, studying her with an evaluating gaze. You're not the first brilliant mind I've encountered, Maya. But you might be the most determined. That counts for more than you might think. He pressed a button on the conference table, and Eliza reappeared almost immediately, as if she'd been waiting just outside. Show Maya the R&D department, particularly Dr. Chen's team. I think she'll fit well there. Of course, Eliza replied, her expression revealing nothing of what she might have overheard. This way, Maya. As they walked through the gleaming corridors of Reed Biotech, Maya processed Harrison's words. There had been something unguarded in his explanation, a glimpse of the idealist who had perhaps been subsumed by the CEO. She wondered if that person still existed beneath the polished exterior, or if he was merely a convenient narrative Harrison told himself to justify his compromises. Dr. Chen can be demanding, Eliza was saying as they approached another laboratory. But she's brilliant, and she values innovation over pedigree. You'll learn a great deal from her. Through the glass, Maya could see a small, energetic woman, gesturing emphatically at a holographic display, while a team of researchers nodded attentively. The laboratory itself was state-of-the-art. Equipment Maya had only read about in journals, technology she dreamed of accessing during long nights of theoretical study in the mall's food court. Will I actually get to use all that? Maya asked, unable to hide her awe. That and more, Eliza confirmed. Reed Biotech believes in providing the best tools possible. Ideas can't flourish without proper resources. They continued the tour, passing research libraries, simulation rooms, prototype fabrication labs, and collaborative spaces where teams worked on complex problems. Each area represented opportunity that Maya had thought forever beyond her reach just weeks ago. She absorbed every detail, mentally mapping the facility while trying to maintain her composure. And this, Eliza said finally, stopping before a small office, is your workspace when you're here. It's not much, but it's private. Maya stared at the modest but well-equipped office. A desk, an ergonomic chair, a computer terminal, and a small window overlooking the city. Her name was already on the door. M. Patel. My own office, she whispered, unable to comprehend this latest development. Harrison believes that everyone needs space to think, Eliza explained. Even part-time scholarship students. She handed Maya an access card. This will get you in any time, day or night. Some of our best researchers keep unusual hours. Maya took the card, its weight in her palm, another anchor to this new reality. Thank you, she managed, the words inadequate for the emotion behind them. Don't thank me yet, Eliza replied with a hint of amusement. Wait until you've met Dr. Chen and her impossible deadlines. They completed the tour at the elevator bank, where Eliza checked her watch. You should head to campus now. The registrar is expecting you at noon to finalize your class schedule. Right, Maya said, suddenly remembering the second half of her day's agenda. Student by day, researcher by night. A schedule that would leave little time for doubt or reflection, which was perhaps for the best. Maya, Eliza said as the elevator arrived, her tone softening slightly. A piece of advice, if I may. Everyone here has something to prove, including Harrison. Try to remember that you're not the only one seeking redemption. Before Maya could respond, the elevator doors closed, leaving her alone with this cryptic observation. As the car descended, she caught her reflection in the polished metal wall. A young woman in new clothes, with a visitor badge, looking almost like she belonged. The imposter feeling remained, but alongside it grew something else, determination. She thought of her mother's words, written in her textbook. The future belongs to those who build it. Perhaps this was her chance to build not just her own future, but something larger, the affordable medical technology that might have saved her mother's life. As the elevator reached the ground floor, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Purpose. Not just survival, not just getting through another day, but actual direction. A chance to fulfill the promise her mother had always seen in her. The doors opened to the soaring atrium, now bustling with midday activity. Maya stepped out, no longer overwhelmed by the grandeur or intimidated by the purposeful professionals around her. She had 15 hours a week in this building, access to cutting-edge technology, and a mind shaped by both theoretical knowledge and hard-won resilience. Ready to begin? She whispered to herself, echoing Eliza's earlier question as she walked toward the revolving doors and the next part of her day. Maya straightened her shoulders, leaving behind the hunched posture of someone trying to disappear. More than ready. Outside, the city pulsed with energy under the midday sun. Maya checked the campus map on her phone, plotting the most efficient route to the registrar's office. As she walked, her mind was already racing with possibilities for improving the blood analysis device Harrison had shown her. The coagulation problem might be solvable with a modified capillary tube design, perhaps using a hydrophilic coating with time degradation properties. For the first time in a long time, Maya allowed herself to think beyond immediate survival, to imagine not just tomorrow, but next week, next month, next year, to consider not just what she needed, but what she might create. Sometimes the end of one story is merely the first page of another, one with chapters yet to be written by a hand now steady enough to hold the pen. And as Maya navigated the busy sidewalks toward her future, she felt the first draft of that new story beginning to take shape. Word by word, step by step, possibility by possibility.